have everybody's attention now?
Hey now. What's up, Joe, man? How's everything going?
Going pretty good, man. A big week this last week, ready to jump into things. Got a lot to talk about.
Absolutely, man. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Podcast Express. We've had a cool couple of weeks here, man. We've had a lot of news that we've discussed. We got a lot of news today. We actually have a big guest on today. Probably one of the most talked about wrestlers in the world today. His not for a good thing though. His name is Marcus Everett, and everybody's seen the GIF. It's been all over the internet. Every major superstar is talking about it. Jim Cornette was talking about it on his show today. Conan and his show, they were talking about it. Disco Inferno was talking about it. X-Pac, Hurricane Helms. It is the botched spot heard around the world as Marcus Everett came off a balcony and missed a table and splatted on the concrete. That guy is coming on the show today, man.
Yeah, that was a hardcore spot too. Like watching it, I could feel how bad it hurt. So I can't even imagine what he was going through.
Yeah, man. So we'll hear it straight from the horse's mouth. But hey, our top story is Jon Jones fucked up again.
Jon Jones is a piece of shit.
Yeah, he just can't seem to get out of his own way, man. So if everybody is not familiar with the story, I know we have a lot of wrestling fans who don't really pay attention to UFC. So I think this is very relevant to pro wrestling, and I'll tell you why. Jon Jones, he recently defeated Daniel Cormier at UFC 214, and he won the light heavyweight championship. And the reason why he won the light heavyweight championship is because he was stripped of the title 2 years prior to that for a hit and run where he actually got into a car accident, and there was a pregnant woman in the other car, and he fled the scene of the accident, and the UFC stripped him of his title, and he was put on probation. He had to do all kinds of charity work and this and that, pay a bunch of fines. Well, he comes back from that, and he fights Ovince St. Preux, and he's getting ready to get his light heavyweight title return match last year at UFC 200, and the week of UFC 200, he tested positive for clomiphene, which is an anti-estrogen drug, which is illegal, a banned substance. You're not allowed to take that. So the fight was called off. It was canceled. He did the whole crying in front of everybody. He went in front of the athletic commission and was crying the blues, saying that he had a tainted supplement. It wasn't his fault. He said he was taking a boner pill. Joe, you know about those.
Yeah, no, they work great.
Yeah, so I guess he took a boner pill from his friend. Okay, look, if you're under 30 taking boner pills, there's something seriously fucking wrong with you. But he took a boner pill, and that's what was positive, or that's what had the clomiphene in it. And so he got a reduced sentence. He was basically, he got a 1-year suspension. And then everything was great. His life's going great. He comes back a year later. He gets his light heavyweight title match with Daniel Cormier. He knocks him out cold in a fantastic fight. They did almost 1 million pay-per-view buys. I think they were at 860,000. And he was on track to fight Brock Lesnar. He actually had called Brock Lesnar out at the end of the pay-per-view, and it was probably the most talked about story in sports for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, aside from, right up there with Mayweather, McGregor, that it garnished a lot of buzz because you had not just fight fans, but you also had wrestling fans talking about it. And after that fight, I finally, after a long time, wanted to get behind Jon Jones. He said all the right things. Mm-hmm. He really pumped up Daniel Cormier and said, that's the man I want to be, which was really surprising to hear because they had a lot of bad blood the last couple of years. Had never said a nice thing about each other. And after everything, after you finally get the crowd behind your back, this is probably the worst possible scenario, not for just him, but for UFC also, because UFC's lacking stars outside of Conor McGregor. They're lacking drawing power. Jon Jones should have been your next guy up. This is the guy who was supposed to be the greatest of all time, the greatest talent we had ever seen in the UFC, if you listen to Joe Rogan. And it's hard to dispute that. He's never lost. But maybe now we're finally starting to see why he never lost.
Yeah, man. And that fight with Brock Lesnar was going to be well over 2 million pay-per-view buys. It would have been one of the biggest UFC fights of all time, no doubt. And they were supposed to do that next summer. In the meantime, I think Jon Jones, they said that he was going to be fighting Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title. And now all of that's just completely out the window. He's probably going to get a 3 or 4 year suspension on this deal, unless he gets some really good lawyers and the athletic commission realizes they'll be losing a lot of money by not having him fight, and maybe they'll give him a reduced suspension for another tainted supplement bullshit lie. But so the coincidence here is he tested positive for this drug called Turinabol. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And it's a drug that the East Germans used to use back in the 60s and 70s. And the coincidence here is that Frank Mir, who is Jon Jones' teammate, also tested positive for Turinabol about a year ago. And I believe they have the same coaches, the same nutrition coaches, all that stuff. It seems like there's something going on there at Greg Jackson's MMA.
Yeah, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but has George St. Pierre left Greg Jackson's MMA? Did he train with Greg Jackson?
Well, so Greg Jackson is one of his coach, but he doesn't train in New Mexico. George St. Pierre trains at in TriStar in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, with Faraz Sahabi. But Greg Jackson is one of his coaches, but he is not a Jackson Winklejohn team member.
Okay, I was curious because, with everything going on with St. Pierre when he left, obviously St. Pierre's one of his reasonings for leaving was he felt the sport was dirty. Wasn't sure if that might have been some firsthand stuff he had seen there. But putting that aside, I mean, something's clearly up. I listened to Wrestling Observer Radio last night, and Brian Alvarez was talking about this. I mean, it's been around since the 60s. How can you be so dumb as to test positive for something that's been around for going on almost 60 years now?
Yeah.
I mean, and his only logic for what it could be, and I kind of agree with this, that maybe he was thinking that since it's been around for so long and it's so outdated, they might not think to check for it. And that's plausible. If people are, because all these new steroids are coming out, like chemists and scientists, they're making all kinds of shit to try to get past things that, they're having to test for. Maybe they wouldn't think to check for something that old. I mean, go back to the roots of steroids. They may not think to check for it. That's the only logic that they could find for why Jon Jones would have tested for something so outdated. I just don't understand it.
Well, even the stuff that was around in the 60s, it still works. So people still use it, and it's mainly used by guys in sports that involves weight cutting, because it's a weight cutting drug. It's like to where you can cut weight without losing a lot of muscle mass. That's where you keep a lot of your strength. So that drug is perfect for fighting. Now, it doesn't make sense as to why Frank Mir would have that drug, because he's a heavyweight. He doesn't need to cut weight to make heavyweight. So something fishy going on there, man. But yeah, this whole thing is crazy. Dana White has since come out and basically said that he thinks that Daniel Cormier, once the due process is handled and the B samples tested, it looks like Daniel Cormier is going to get his heavyweight title back. And I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of Dana White from his little press last night. Joe, you may not be able to hear this, so beware.
It's brutal. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm sure I feel the same way every one of you felt when you heard. It's unbelievable.
There's still an administration process, but if this is proven to be true, what will be the process with the title and the belt and that sort of thing?
I'm not going to say anything until this whole thing plays out and see how this thing, where we end up. But, it's unbelievable.
Until the process is done, Dana, could this have come at a worse time, sort of the eyes of the whole world on the sport?
Yeah, I mean, these never come at a good time. They're always bad, especially with somebody like Jon Jones, who, wherever you sit in MMA, in my opinion, he's the best to ever do it. He's the best ever. That makes it even more unfortunate.
Have you talked to Cormier?
I did. What did he say? Holy shit, this is crazy. He's in Hawaii right now with his family on vacation, and he couldn't believe it either. He felt the same way that I did.
Have you spoken to John?
Huh?
Have you spoken to John?
I've not spoken.
Dana, how much do you think this taints his legacy?
How much what?
How much do you think this taints his legacy?
I mean, if this ends up and he gets, and it ends up, getting 2 or 3, that might be the end of his career. So to talk about his legacy, it's probably the end of his career.
You don't see him coming back?
he might. Well, let me tell you, it's tough. I mean, how old is Jon now? 30?
30.
Yeah, 33, 34, trying to make a comeback again. And you look at what could have been, what he could have done, and it's sad.
You've been very patient.
And yeah, that was a little clip from Dana White's media scrum yesterday. You guys can check it out on YouTube. We'll tweet out the video later. Joe, did you get a chance to hear what that was?
Yeah, no, it wasn't coming through for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. I'm just playing it off my phone. But basically what Dana White said is that he thinks Jon Jones might be done. Though, because 3 or 4 years, man, he might just have to call it a career at that point and look for something else to do. Which is pretty relevant to our show here. Rumors are already going around. Obviously, I doubt Jon Jones is even thinking about it, but I don't think it's too early for Vince McMahon to think about, bringing Jon Jones in. He's obviously a huge wrestling fan.
Yeah, well, the problem with that being is he's still under contract for UFC. Dana White would he would have to do him a favor and let him out of his contract or give him permission to go to WWE. I mean, if you're Dana White, like, why bother? Like, why do this kid any favors?
Well, you gotta let the kid earn a living, though. You can't just hold his contract hostage for 4 years.
I mean, it's not holding it. It's not your doing. He's the one who fucked himself over.
Yeah, but
I mean, at some point you have to.
You can stop the guy from fighting, but you don't want to stop the guy from earning a living completely. But they did let Frank Mir out of his contract recently. They've let other guys out of their contracts. For some reason, they won't let Tom Lawler out of his contract because Tom Lawler wants to go full-blown pro wrestler. And right now, he can only work the independent scene. I have no idea why they won't let him out of his contract, but they have let other guys.
Yeah, for me, it's how much of a favor does Dana White want to do for Jon Jones? Because at this point, Jon Jones has really screwed you over in every opportunity he can. So it'll be interesting to see where things go from there. And I also want to voice, what Mark Hunt said. Going back to Daniel Cormier, I think Cormier should get all of Jon Jones's purse. I mean, I really like the idea of if you test positive for steroids, the other fighter should get your purse because you did not earn it. I'm not a fan of guys fighting dirty. Yeah, whatever. He gets suspended. Cool. He still got paid. He probably got paid millions of dollars for that fight where he was not clean.
Oh, probably $10 million, easy.
Yeah.
And he almost killed Daniel Cormier. I mean, he knocked his fucking head off.
Yeah, and it's not fair to Daniel Cormier or any other fighter in the light heavyweight division who could have been in that spot clean. I mean, that could have easily been Alexander Gustafsson fighting Daniel Cormier again in a rematch, and Cormier's already beat him, but Gustafsson has had a nice little win streak after that. It could have been Gustafsson in that spot. Yeah. I mean, it could have been a number of guys. It's not fair for Jon Jones. It was the same thing when Mark Hunt fought Brock Lesnar, and Brock Lesnar wasn't clean. It's not fair to walk in there against a guy who is dirty, that guy to get paid more than you, get popped for steroids, and essentially nothing happens. Like, yeah, he's going to get suspended, but he'll go earn millions elsewhere. Yeah. Nothing is going to happen to this guy at all. And that's the shitty thing. Well,
I mean, nothing. I mean, his career's over. I mean, he can only fight in Russia and Japan, and a couple other countries. But if he did that, he would never be welcomed back to fight in the States or any country with an athletic commission. So I think his only option here is A, go get a regular job, or B, I think that he could be a millionaire in pro wrestling if he wanted.
Yeah, I mean, he has all the ability in the world. He's super athletic. He's got the size that a guy like Vinnie Mac or hell, Global Force would probably put the title on him from day one.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And from there, once his suspension's over, he can just go fight for Bellator.
Yeah.
Because they don't care about welcoming somebody like that in.
Oh no, absolutely not. But it's 4 years is a long time to go between fights, man. It doesn't happen a whole lot.
How long are we between GSP fights at this point? Is it 3-4 years?
3 or 4 years, yeah. But he chose to walk away.
Yeah, and you have other guys like Hoist Gracie. I think he went quite a long time before he fought Matt Hughes. I think it was probably like 7 years, was it not?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was.
Yeah, and from there, like, when you're a big enough name, the appeal is still going to be there, and you're going to have that curiosity of, does he still have it? Yeah. Like, will he have it if he's clean? So if he were to sit out for 4 years and decide to come back for fighting, I think it would still do a huge buy rate. Now, talent-wise, whether or not he would still have it, we wouldn't know. But I think it's plausible to step away for 4 years in a social media age where you can keep your name out there doing other things. I think it's not a huge deal.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. You kind of want to hope the best for the guy, but he's kind of getting what he deserves right now. I mean, the guy just keeps messing up over and over and over again. And, now where does that leave Daniel Cormier? I guess he could fight Alexander Gustafsson. Or if he even wants to fight again, who knows? Oh, you know what? Hey, actually, that's Marcus right there. Hold on just a sec. So we got a very special guest on the line today. He's probably one of the more talked about pro wrestlers in the world right now. I think everybody has seen the GIF going around of him missing a table while he was coming off the balcony. But he's been a good sport about it. He has had a sense of humor, and he seems like a really cool dude. And we're really excited to have him on. We got Marcus Eastman, right?
Marcus Everett.
Marcus Everett. Sorry, I was thinking. Who I was thinking of was Marvin the Beastman Eastman, the old UFC fighter. I kept calling you Eastman all day in my head. Sorry about that. Marcus Everett.
It's okay. It's okay.
So how are you doing, man? How are you feeling? How's your body holding up after that? How's everything going?
Me, I'm feeling just fine. I believe President Roosevelt would say strong as a bull moose, something like that.
Yeah. So you haven't really had any health effects since landing on the concrete like that?
No. Could you repeat that, please?
Oh, so are you feeling any health effects since landing on the concrete like that? Because if I would have landed on the concrete from that distance, I would have evaporated. I'm pretty sure. I would have just crumbled into 1,000. I would have crumbled into 1,000 pieces.
Well, first I want to caveat by saying I don't take much pride in it, but nope, there's no adverse health effects. I mean, they say chicks dig scars, and I've had a few pretty nice conversations and met some wonderful people because of this unfortunate incident. So I can't get too mad at it.
No, man.
Certainly. Hey, how far of a drop was that, and was that something you had practiced before the show? Have you done a spot similar to that?
Well, I don't know how far the drop was. It could have maybe it was 20 feet, 15 feet. I don't know. The closest thing to that spot I had done is if you find my match with Cole Roderick, fantastic work. I can't wait to see the awesome things he's going to do going forward. But I had a match with Cole Roderick in May at IWA's King of the Death match, and we were opening for King of the Death match, and we know what's going to happen. John Wayne Murdoch, Ricky Shane Page are there. They're going to tear the place apart. And we were there, put in that position, and we asked, what do we need to do? And I promise you, I know I've had the worst first impression, but I actually try to be a wrestler. But Cole and I had made the decision to go crazy. And during that match was the first time I had climbed that wall. I didn't climb to the second level though. I climbed the first level of the wall and jumped in a crossbody off of it, and woohoo, wonderful pop. And we had one of my personal favorite matches, which took place at King of the Death match in May. But that's the closest thing to practice I had done for a spot like that. But
now the day of the show. Was that something like, did you guys talk about that, or was that like an impulse during the match of like, hey, I'm here, let's do it?
It was not totally during the match. My mindset going into it, we did have some ideas going in, some pretty insane things to do that I wish we could have done. That actually probably would have been safer, more insane, but a little insane, but safer. But the match was billed as the last battle in Memphis. We were not going to be wrestling in the Memphis. It was a flea market at the time. It's a trading post now, and it was going to be our last show there. And every time I wrestled there, I always looked at that wall and thought, maybe someday. It was my own personal thing, and it was my own hubris which caused this. And that's why I believe the outcome I deserved it.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody deserves
that's a good
that.
way to take it.
Yeah.
You just, when you think about it, just going forward and in life and whatnot, if what you have to do, you don't tell the powers that be, maybe you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with myself and say that.
Yeah.
Because afterwards, I got props. I hope I didn't get congratulations. I don't think behavior like that should be encouraged. But I got props for finishing the match. But Ian Rotten, class act, said, if I had known you were going to do that, no, I would have never allowed that to happen. And he knew some of the spots we were going to do in that match. And he always says, I wouldn't ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself. But he took fantastic care of me. He would not let me tear the ring down. I got paid. I stayed at his place. He made sure that I was taken care of on the way home, and called me and whatnot. Called and checked up on my family. It was again, it really meant a lot to me. How far he stuck his neck out after that happened.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Ian Rotten's got a really good reputation of being a cool guy and a cool guy to work for. Well, from obviously I'm not a worker. I wouldn't know personally, but just from what I hear and what I've read online, and well, not his real brother, but his brother Axel Rotten and Ian Rotten, they were big stars in ECW back in the day, and they were crazy.
Absolutely.
And they were crazy. And for one of those guys to tell you that he wouldn't want you to do something like that, that's got to be a big deal.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you're okay. And you've taken this whole thing in stride, which is awesome. Some of the veterans have kind of come out and commented on the video that's going around, to include big stars like Hurricane Helms, Jim Cornette. Obviously, he talked about it on his show today. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to his podcast, but he had brought it up, and you guys had some correspondence. Has anybody called you or reached out to you personally to talk to you about it?
Well, I've not gotten any calls from any particularly bigger names, but when it happened, you see, this event happened, I believe it was July 2nd, a lot of the days run together, and I knew the DVD would be coming out eventually, and I believe I even tweeted about it. My phone exploded. And I was like, here we go. Here we go. But I've gotten quite a few messages, a lot of love, a lot of respect, and some people just kind of getting some pats on the back. And I believe the best compliment I got from this is my personal favorite. It was from a worker in Detroit. He's fantastic. His name is Chris Moore. He called me a human cockroach. Because you should see some of the beatings I've taken and some of the bumps I've taken in my short time doing this. And he says, it doesn't matter what happens to you, just nothing seems to be able to kill you.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that can't last forever. But since you brought it up, how long?
Oh, no, it's not. I've got... Continue.
Oh, no. I was just going to ask you, so how long have you been working, and who trained you?
I've been working for 2 years. I started July of 2015. I originally started at Northwest Ohio Wrestling. And again, as I explained, my trainers understand that my trainers would not condone this type of behavior as well.
Right.
They were world-class workers. Conrad Kennedy III, CK3, Benjamin Boone, and then eventually the best trainer that I ever had was Dave Pritt, who you can watch on Impact.
Right.
And they pointed me in very good directions, and I try my best to stay going in those directions. And again, that type of behavior just wasn't necessary and wasn't good when you're carrying those names with you.
Right. Well, you know what I would have done, and I would have if I would have done that. I would have died. Let's be honest. I'm not nowhere near as athletic as you are, but had I done that, I would have just tried to tell everybody, "Oh no, I meant to do that. Now I'm famous." So that's
meant to do that. Well, the thing is, I didn't. It wasn't. I meant to do that, but after it was all over, people asked me how I felt. I just said all I remember saying as the hand slapped 3 and I finished the match. I just said, they'll remember this. They will remember this.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can we watch that match? I mean, it's a DVD out, or can you get it online, like on like High Spots or something like that, or is there the IWA website?
IWA under Smart Mark Video. That's where you can find it.
Oh, okay.
Now, is that a promotion? Do you guys get to tour around the country? Are you primarily in one area? I mean, because this obviously could bring a lot of attention to you guys.
IWA Mid-South primarily does shows out of Memphis, Indiana.
Okay. Now, see, I'm glad you brought up Indiana. My first thought was Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes. When I first heard about it being in Memphis, I'm like, "Yay, we're going to Memphis!" And just hopping in cars as a young boy, and then I end up in Indiana. I'm like, "This isn't Tennessee." So fair enough.
Oh, that's so funny because on Jim Cornette's show today, his co-host was Jim was asking, like, where did they do this match? And the co-host goes, "Oh, it was in Memphis." And then he damn near blew a gasket because, well, Jerry Lawler would not approve of this. He was really upset, but he didn't know that it was Memphis, Indiana. So
No, Memphis, Indiana.
That's awesome.
About how many shows do you guys get to do a year? Do you guys currently have something on the books coming up that we need to be aware of?
They are doing a lot of shows right now. I've seen them doing shows on Tuesdays as well, but they do shows every Thursday and Saturday.
Awesome. And is it syndicated anywhere? Can you catch it on TV?
You typically find it just on Smart Mark Video, just on their DVDs. And if you can, well, I guess you guys are out in California. That's the area code was. But
yeah,
if you can make it to one live, it is a fantastic environment. I love the crowd there. It really was my favorite place to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not just working IWA Mid-South, right? I mean, you're probably touring or going to a bunch of different shows or companies at this point, right?
Well, there was a time I was. So I guess is it story time?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you remember I said the tweet that's been retweeted a lot is, when I smacked the concrete, 3 things went through my head: my family, Matthew, and Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
Did you see that tweet by any chance?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
So the thing about that is, around the time that match was happening, several tumultuous things were happening in my personal life. And one thing that is very, very serious to me is my sister is battling multiple sclerosis.
Ooh.
Okay. And my mom as well, who's her primary caregiver, is having surgery very soon. And her not being able to fulfill the duties of being a primary caregiver, I decided that it would be best right now, just for her recovery period, which should be about 3 months, that I take a back step from traveling and touring. I still primarily work around Toledo, Ohio, and in Detroit, Michigan. But it may be a while before you see me in IWA or several other places.
Oh, well, yeah, man. Family comes first, always, absolutely. And we'll send some prayers out for you and your family.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. She's very strong and determined to walk again, and nothing's going to stop her. She's even more resilient than me.
Absolutely, and she's got a great guy looking out for you, a guy like you, man. That's awesome.
Why, thank you.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for you? What are your goals in pro wrestling? I obviously everybody at some point wants to be in the WWE one day, right? But what are some of your short term and long term goals, and who do you like to watch as a fan right now?
My goals essentially were to be seen as reliable, and to be able to work with anyone of any skill level at any time at a moment's notice, not have to meticulously draw out my matches. I just wanted the necessary instinct. Those are really the goals that I want. If you're reliable and you can work with anyone, that means you can go anywhere. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was that. My initial inspiration to get into professional wrestling was Shawn Michaels, and then I had stopped watching wrestling for a while, and the superstar who brought me back was the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. Always loved his work. And then when I began training, I looked into the work of Dynamite Kid a lot, and then as I continued my training, I really, really, really admired the work of Dave and Jake Crist. And I'll even go on record and say Jake Crist is my favorite wrestler.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Now, I'm really happy you brought up the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan. I would like to get your thoughts on all this information coming out about him. Yourself as a wrestler and as a family man, obviously I'm sure you're aware of his story. What do you make of him potentially coming back to the ring? What would likely be late 2018 or early 2019, given the health issues he's had? What's your take on that?
My take on it is he's an intelligent man. He knows what he's doing, and he would do what's necessary to make sure that his family was safe, and that was all in order before stepping into the ring again. And he would do what he needs to do for his own happiness. And that's really what we as humans should do. Not saying he would be selfish. He's doing what he has to do right now for his family in order to do the things that he enjoys, which is professional wrestling. And if he's been cleared by as many doctors as he's been cleared by, and he's as smart of a worker as he is, to know what he's doing in the ring and to protect himself, I see no reason why not, why he shouldn't continue to do what he loves, even if it wouldn't be on the stage that would be considered the grandest.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I've gone on record as saying I hope he never returns to the ring, but there appears to be more details coming out that his health is improving. So who knows? Maybe we'll see him in WWE again, or maybe somewhere down the line we'll see him, face you down the line, because he's somebody who could very well work the indies, and I think it'd be a fantastic move just for everybody in wrestling if he does step in the ring.
Yeah.
Did I lose you again?
Yeah, I think we're having some connection issues. I think we're going to go ahead and let you get back to doing what you're doing.
I think we might be on a delay of some kind.
Yeah, I think that we are. So I think we're going to go ahead and let you go, and then we'll keep in touch, man. And we're glad that you're okay, and we're glad that you're a really good sport about it, and we just hope the best for you and your career. And as far as I'm concerned, open door policy, man. Anytime you want to come on the show and talk some wrestling with us.
Absolutely, I would love to.
All right, man. You have a good night.
All right. It was a pleasure. I'll see you. Good night.
Yeah, bye. All right, Joe, you still there?
Yeah, man.
All right, yeah, we started to lose him there for. Honestly, I thought he was fucking with us for a little bit.
Yeah. No, it sounded like we may have got on a delay there because he was responding to questions about a minute after we asked him.
Yeah.
But man, what a cool guy, and what a great story, and unfortunate situation. Sorry to hear about what's going on with his family. A lot of thoughts and prayers out there, and hopefully a speedy recovery all around to see him back in the ring again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He sounded like a really cool dude, and I'm really I hope we get a chance to have him on again. And everybody's been kind of making fun of him, but you know what, man? He's a really down to earth guy. He seems to love his craft. He's a huge wrestling fan, and I actually am going to go out of my way to watch some of his work on the IWA Mid South, man, because I would call him friend of the show now.
Yeah, exactly. And why make fun? Like people mess up spots. It happens. I mean, John Cena shit himself in the ring. Like, let's be real. Like,
and
this guy, he dropped 20 feet to concrete, and he didn't shit himself. He got up, he finished the match, and walked away. So don't give him a hard time. Just respect the toughness and the athleticism, and hopefully this guy goes on to have a really great career. Yeah,
man. Really, really cool guy. So that was Marcus Everett. Everybody look him up on Twitter. He is at EverlastingMBD. and we'll be sure to tweet him out, and then we'll try to get him on again soon, and hopefully we have a better connection with him. But so our top story number 2, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say this again. It's me.
Yeah. Again, is this 3 weeks running now?
3 weeks running. I'm just going to talk about myself and how fucking famous I am. But no, all kidding aside, thank you to Dave Meltzer. He mentioned me in the Observer again today. Basically what he wrote in the Observer today is what I emailed him. And so he was really cool. I didn't ask him to put that in there. I was just telling him so that way he would know the situation. And but it was really cool of him to go ahead and put that in the Observer. And as far as I'm concerned, I had nothing to do with Baron Corbin losing his push and his Money in the Bank. It looks like the fault lies on John Cena now.
Yeah, and, obviously this would have been decided, I assume, weeks ago that Baron Corbin was probably going to drop the Money in the Bank. People never got behind it from the beginning, and they pulled the trigger on it fast. And we were hoping going into SummerSlam weekend that he'd just go out and have a really good match with John Cena, and that it would be the start of something bigger. He didn't. Whether it was on him or Cena, like, that match wasn't very good. And we could see kind of similar what happened to Damian Sandow when Sandow lost his Money in the Bank. Like, we could see Baron Corbin drop down to the lower level card and just kind of be nothing moving forward.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But you know what? It kind of looks like Baron Corbin is going to be programmed with AJ Styles, and I think that could be the best thing for his career because, if anybody can get the best out of him, it's going to be AJ Styles.
Yeah, I mean, AJ Styles could get the best wrestling match out of a wet paper bag if he needed to. It's a lot of it's going to depend on what do they let them do, though. Do they let AJ Styles go there and have a great match? How are they going to book the feud? How are they going to book his promos moving forward? Because there's so much that goes into it. I mean, obviously they can go out there and put on a 4.5-star match with AJ Styles, but the booking of it will depend on whether or not people actually get behind him moving forward after the feud, because a feud with AJ Styles can get him there, but can he continue to be there after the feud? And there's going to be a lot of things inside that feud that will determine that.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, top story number 2, me. And top story number 3, I guess kind of also me. I was in Lake Tahoe this weekend, and one of the first things I did is I went to the casino, and I placed a bet, man. I put $40 down on Mayweather to win a decision over McGregor, because the betting line was plus 190. And what that means is if I betted $100, I would win $190. So I bet 40, I'm gonna win like $76 or something like that. So it does two things. A, it makes the fight more entertaining for me, and B, if I win, I get to go back to fucking Tahoe so I can pick up that money and then buy a steak or something. Yeah.
Now, but if somehow the gods are shining down and the light is the right way and McGregor wins, at that point you lose $140 on this fight. Because you're going to be paying
I'm sorry.
Well, you're paying $100 for the pay-per-view, right?
No. So that was there's more to that story. So I will not even be home this weekend. I'm actually going to go down to visit family this weekend. And I think you have an idea as to why I got to go back home. But I'm going to be doing the Gilbert thing this weekend. So I will actually be with the Garbage Time guys, and they're getting the fight. So
there you go. All right,
saving $100 on that deal.
It makes me feel a little bit better about your prospects on this fight then.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. But I think the excitement for the fight has peaked and has worn off. What do you think? Yeah, I kind of agree right there. And to me, I think I predicted this a couple weeks ago on the Garbage Time podcast that the hype would all be, it would peak going up to the build up to the fight would be the more entertaining thing. And now that we're closer to the fight, I mean, people are kind of dying off. They realize what it's going to be, and it's probably not going to be a great boxing match. I mean, we'll probably see Mayweather run around a little bit and just dodge everything McGregor throws at him. And people are starting to realize that. Again, don't expect a lot of excitement on Saturday night. There's not a lot of great undercard stuff. So, buyer beware.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think everybody's still going to buy it because it's going to be the biggest spectacle I think that we've seen in probably ever. I would say in forever. I think it's the biggest sporting spectacle of all time.
Yeah, I mean it's the two biggest fighters in their respective sport. We've never seen something like that. It would have been kind of similar if Mike Tyson would have fought like Tank Abbott in the early '90s. I don't know who the biggest UFC fighter was when Mike Tyson was big, but I think it was Tank Abbott or
Ken Shamrock.
Ken Shamrock, okay.
Or
not much
Hoist,
difference.
yeah. Hoist Gracie, Ken Shamrock, I think. Yeah.
Hoist Gracie probably a better comparison. So yeah, if Tyson would have fought, Hoist Gracie, obviously ignoring the size matchups there, but Hoist would have fought him because he'll fight anybody. It would have been similar to that, but obviously UFC, MMA, a hell of a lot more popular nowadays, so we'll probably never see something similar to this again. I would think not, because once the fight or the boxing match, whatever the hell we're going to call it, happens, people will probably be let down by it, and I don't think there will be this much hype to be able to be built up because people probably wouldn't want to pay to see it again. Now, with that being said, if McGregor shocks the world, if somehow he does it, if he connects on just the perfect punch and is able to actually win this thing, I think the rematch that happens would probably be the biggest thing to ever happen on pay-per-view.
50 million buys or something like that.
Yeah, it's just something ridiculous.
Yeah.
$200 per buy. It'll be insane if he's able to shock the world.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But I'm still going to be watching, and we'll have the report for everybody here next week. Or I'm sure everybody's going to know, so we'll probably just make fun of the fight. So we had a big weekend in wrestling. There was Ring of Honor had a card this weekend. I didn't watch it. Joe, you watched it. We're not really going to get into that because nothing really happened, right? I mean, would you say anything was worthwhile?
The only thing noteworthy, I would say, is in the middle of the American Nightmare Cody, last name redacted. He started doing the yes chants to potentially build up a future feud with Daniel Bryan if he does come back to wrestling. That was probably the only noteworthy thing from the event. And I will say for Cody, if the guy, he's a good wrestler. He delivers a solid match night in and night out. But the charisma that he's shown since leaving WWE, if he could wrestle like somebody like Aleister Black or Daniel Bryan, or even a little further up there like AJ Styles, he'd be the biggest star in the world for wrestling right now, because the guy's work as a heel has been phenomenal. He's just, the only thing holding him back is he's just a very good wrestler, and he's not great.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had TakeOver and SummerSlam. I don't want to get into breaking down the card because it's Thursday and everybody kind of already knows what happened. But what I'd like to get into is the star ratings for some of the big matches. TakeOver had a 98% thumbs up, which is not at all surprising. Every match on that show was good. They actually rated the Sanity versus AOP matches the worst, and it still had like 3.5 stars. So that tells you how freaking good this show was. But looks like the best match, at least by the Wrestling Observer, was Asuka versus Ember Moon at 4.5 stars, which has got to be one of the highest rated women's matches ever. I know that some Japanese ones have gotten 5, but this is a really good rating.
Yeah, it would be the highest rated women's match to my knowledge since Sasha and Bayley at TakeOver a couple of years ago. I was hoping that it would get slightly higher than the 4.5 star it got, and it's splitting hairs really. It's personal preference. I would have probably put it at 4.75 stars. It was my favorite match of the weekend. I really enjoyed it. It had me on the edge of my seat. Knowing Asuka broke her collarbone during the match and finished it kind of adds a little bit more to it for me. And I was really not sure, would the streak end? Would it continue? It had me going. I liked it better than the Fatal 4-Way at SummerSlam. It was my favorite match of the weekend.
Wow, and the Fatal 4-Way at SummerSlam was the highest rated match of the weekend at 4.75 stars. That was via Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer, but our poll that we did, which we had a lot of votes for, I think we had over 100 votes, and they voted it at 5 stars. Over 80% was at 5 stars, man. So that's how much everybody loved it. I thought that was the best match of the weekend. I know, everybody's going to he likes the spectacle. Well, I do. not the biggest fan of four-ways, man, but whenever Brock Lesnar's involved and they lay out the match correctly, and I got to tell you, that was the most noteworthy. You had the most excitement, the most drama, and the biggest star in WWE today came out of that match, and that's Braun Strowman. He looked fucking phenomenal, man.
Yeah, and I still don't know, like, he's kind of in that area of what The Undertaker was, where he's not a heel, but he's not a good guy either, but the fans are also just so very behind him. He's, I mean, clearly the biggest star WWE has right now. They've booked him the perfect way, and I'm stoked to see him versus Lesnar coming up. Is it No Mercy in October that they'll be facing each other?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. I'm really excited for that too, and I have a very strong opinion about the placement of that match. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So other matches with star ratings, you had Andrade Cien Almas versus Gargano, which I thought was an amazing match. It was a 4 1/4. Aleister Black versus Hideo Itami was also 4 1/4. I was gonna guess that was your favorite match of the weekend.
Yeah, it was up there. It felt more like a fight to me than it did a wrestling match. I mean, it was physical as all hell. They kicked the shit out of each other and some stiff punches there, all the way up until Asuka and Ember. It really would have ended up being my favorite match of the night.
Yeah, Drew McIntyre and Bobby Roode was at 4 1/4. I thought that was a pretty good match, but I did not think that it was a 4 1/4. But hey, like you said, we're splitting hairs here. I probably would have done like 4 or 3 3/4. But I think the biggest thing to come out of that match is the debut of Adam Cole. How awesome is that, man? We've been talking about it for a while. And he came in and he's right in the main event title picture.
Yeah, and they did it a perfect way too, because the entire night, like, everybody expected to see him somehow. Normally, when they debut big single stars, they have them in like the front row at TakeOver and put the camera on them, and that lets you know, hey, this guy's coming. Everybody's waiting for it all night. It never came. The match ended. They even put their little copyright graphic up on the screen, kind of signaling like, hey, we're getting ready to cut out. And it felt like it was done until you noticed the crowd reacting to something in the ring and him running in, and the crowd just went nuts. And man, I'm stoked for this. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So for SummerSlam, no surprise here, 45% thumbs up. I kind of had it like thumbs in the middle. I think that the main event saved it, really. But the best match, obviously, Fatal 4-Way. The worst, no surprise, Kaz versus Big Show, who was my running, each and every week was my Who Gives a Shit of the week. Usos versus New Day was 4 stars. I got to admit, I didn't watch that match. Joe, did you get a chance to see it, and do you agree?
Yeah, no, I did, and I would have rated it a little bit higher. Like,
wow,
they stole the show. It was amazing. It was actually my favorite match of SummerSlam night. I just beyond impressed with everything the New Day does. Didn't expect the Usos to walk out with the titles. That shocked me. It was phenomenal, man. Like, go back and watch it. It's worth taking your time for.
Damn, well, I guess I'll have to go check it out, man. Mike Gaspar was saying the same thing. He said that it was the best match on SummerSlam, and I haven't seen the match yet, but man, that Fatal 4-Way just had me on the edge of my seat. I don't know, I fucking loved it. The Shield versus the Bar was.
Well, they're not the Shield. Oh. They haven't come up with their team name yet.
Diet Shield.
Diet Shield. There you go.
Or Shield Light.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so fuck me. Okay, Rollins and Ambrose versus Sheamus and Cesaro, 4 stars. That was I predicted that would be the best match of the night. It was right up there, man. It was really good, hard hitting, and Cesaro became a legend that night.
I was going to say, I think it's a 3 3/4 star match if Cesaro doesn't go out and just tear apart the beach ball. I think that was probably the best part of the match.
Yeah, well, you know what? The last 5 minutes of that, they really went at it, man. That was a really good match. I am excited to see Ambrose and Rollins as a tag team for a while. They work really well together, man. Unfortunately, the next night, they kind of just threw the Hardys at him, and then that was it. Like, what the hell was that all about?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just, to kind of give them something to do. Part of me kind of thinks that they're going to have maybe a holdover feud or just a couple weeks of doing nothing before we potentially see the Authors of Pain come up and face them. I don't know if they'll go that fast with it, though. I mean, obviously, you don't want to have Ambrose and Rollins drop the titles, and you're not going to have Authors of Pain lose early on in their main roster run. But we've got a long build to No Mercy, so I would expect to, in hopes of not seeing constant rematches, that they'll probably try to throw some new teams out there at them.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I would say a really good weekend for wrestling. I was able to watch the main card of SummerSlam and all of TakeOver all in one day, and I was able to keep my marriage intact. So I think a big congratulations goes out to me, and a big shout out to my wife who puts up with it.
Yeah, shout out to her, because man, it's tough to do as a single guy. I can't imagine doing it as a married man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so well, we're getting close to the hour mark, so let's go ahead and knock out some news. WWE news: Braun versus Brock at Braun Strowman, or Braun versus Brock at No Mercy, which we'd brought up earlier. I think this is a mistake. I think they're doing it too early. I honestly, if they're gonna do this, Braun has to go over, and then they got a rematch at WrestleMania, because I think that Braun is the biggest star right now the WWE has.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do. My gut feeling is they wanted to keep the title on Brock because football season is coming up soon. I mean, we're just a couple weeks away from Monday Night Football, and that's obviously going to be their stiffest competition. So keep Brock, coming through early September through football season, get to October, and solidify Braun Strowman as your star, because we'll probably see Brock go away after he drops the title, and then maybe coming out at Rumble or something, costing Braun the title or whatever they decide to do there to set up the rematch at WrestleMania. I think that's exactly their plan.
Yeah, man. Either way, I'm excited to see it. I don't guess it has to be at WrestleMania. Like, what do I care, right? I'm not the one making money off of this deal. I just think that that's what I would do. I don't know. We already talked about this earlier. John Cena doesn't think Baron has it, so I'm off the hook on that whole thing, I think. And so is Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, no, if John Cena is, like, it wouldn't surprise me at all that John Cena is the reason that Corbin ends up getting buried a little bit. Whenever John Cena comes up against a younger star, he might as well just carry a shovel down to the ring, because we know that younger star is going to get buried.
Yeah. Yeah, and he came out on Twitter today. I guess he caught wind of what was being said about him, and he's apparently not happy. But I think that all the guys that so the Garbage Time guys, I guess they're on Reddit a lot, and apparently there's a whole thread where people hate me. I don't get to use Reddit, but yeah. So fuck those guys that hate me. It's all John Cena's fault. Leave me alone. How about that?
There you go. They can't see you.
That's right, motherfuckers. Big Cass tore his big ACL, and now he's in a big fucking hospital bed.
Yeah. It looked rough too. Did you watch it?
I did, yeah. That looked, obviously, we don't wish ill on the guy. Hopefully, it says he's gonna be out like 9 months. Hopefully, he comes back stronger than ever, and he gets his spot back, and he's better than ever, and he gets some more charisma, and he has a great career.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of guys who have really benefited from taking time away from the main roster. I mean, Triple H, obviously, he was a star beforehand, but when he had his big surgery and came back, he became a megastar. Yeah. Randy Orton, similar. Was it a collarbone or shoulder injury?
Shoulder, yeah, rotator cuff.
Yeah, that kept him away for a while. And when he came back, he was a star. So, hopefully, if they find the right story for him to return in, hopefully this is a better thing for him. I mean, They had nothing positive going for him on the main roster right now. We're just going to see him and Enzo and him and Big Show over and over again. So take some time to assess his character and then assess what story you want with him. And you've got 9 months to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Enzo Amore is a fucking cruiserweight now. He's on 205 Live. We had talked about this. There had been speculation that he was going to go to NXT, maybe 205 Live, maybe he was going to go to the unemployment line. I think, honestly, and he's getting a lot of shit for it, and a lot of people are negative on this. I think it's the best thing for him, and I think it's the best thing for 205 Live, because that show is dead. And I've not seen an episode, but when I found out that Enzo was on, and I'm not a big Enzo fan, I think he's great on the mic, obviously. But whenever I saw that he was on, I tuned in. I made sure to just click on it on the WWE Network and watch that part to see his face-to-face with Neville, man. And, well, I guess we'll find out just how good of a worker Neville is here pretty soon. But I dig the whole thing. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, you know what? And that was actually going to be my who gives a shit this week because
well,
I don't care at all. I really don't. When I tune into wrestling, I want to see great wrestling matches. And they're not going to allow that to happen on 205 Live. It's so watered down over there, and Enzo's not going to change the wrestling product of 205 Live. And if you want to look at a perfect quote of why 205 Live is failing, it comes from Daniel Bryan. He was on the Edge and Christian podcast, and he said, "Yeah, sure, these guys are out there doing 450 splashes and Phoenix splashes and all these crazy moves, but what makes them any different than AJ Styles, who's doing that in the main event? If you can see it in the main event on SmackDown every week, why tune into 205 Live to see guys who are not main eventers, guys who get jobber entrances every week, do the same exact moves that AJ Styles is doing, or that Seth Rollins is doing, or hell, even Kevin Owens is doing a lot of these cruiserweight moves."
Yeah.
That's the problem with 205 Live, and they need to figure that out.
Yeah, man. Back when WCW had their cruiserweights, those guys were the only ones doing it. And they really stood out. I mean, but these guys, they're just smaller versions of the heavyweights. So, yeah,
Well,
no, I think he's absolutely right.
They can put on fantastic. Like, the 205 Live has been 100% different than the Cruiserweight Classic that we seen last year. It's just, if you take the Cruiserweight Classic and water it down, that's what we get on 205 Live. Let them open it up a little bit more. I mean, it's not just the moves, it's the pacing, and how they perform the moves and when they perform the moves. And that's we're getting to the same product in the main event that we get on 205 Live. So let these cruiserweights open it up a little bit more.
Yeah, let them do their thing. And I really like the Cruiserweight Classic because it was presented as a sport. I think they should go back to that too. I really like that. Asuka, she broke her collarbone. We already talked about that. So no, I guess she's going to be out for a little while. I was kind of hoping that this was a work and that she was just this is how they were going to take the title off of her, and then she would show up on, SmackDown in a couple of months. But I guess it's legit.
Yeah, even if it's a legit injury, I still hope they take advantage of it and still take the title off of her, use it as a work, because I want to go on record. I've said it 1,000 times. I understand the kind of the way wrestling works, and when you leave a promotion, you lose, you put somebody else over, and you move on to bigger things. Asuka's streak is bigger than NXT right now, and it should not be used to put over an NXT talent. And that's not taking away anything from any of the women wrestlers in NXT, because they have some fantastic wrestlers there, and they've got some fantastic wrestlers coming in. But when she loses, it needs to be in front of millions of people, not in front of hundreds of thousands of people. It needs to be on the main roster, probably on WrestleMania or one of the big four. And I don't want to see her lose on NXT. It just shouldn't happen. When she does lose, it can make somebody a megastar in that division, and it's not going to happen in NXT.
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby Roode is on SmackDown now. I think that's great. We talked about it before, that he was probably going to be going up. I think I told the Garbage Time guys that I thought he was going to be taking Baron Corbin's place, and he's going to be right there in that main event, semi-main event picture. I think Vince McMahon's really high on him. He's got one of the best entrances in the world of all time, and he's a great wrestler. He's got a great look. His only downside is that he's 40, but you look at that guy, you can't tell that he's 40, man. I think he's going to have an awesome. Yeah, I think he's going to have an awesome run here on SmackDown.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a huge downside anymore, because look at guys like Chris Jericho. I mean, Chris Jericho's in his mid to late 40s, and he can still keep up with the best of them in the ring. So, if you take care of yourself, which Rude clearly does, he's in phenomenal shape. I think he can get another 3, 4, even maybe 5 good years out of a run in WWE.
Yeah, absolutely.
A fun fact, because I think the glorious gimmick is what got him over the most, clearly. Like, he probably would have gotten over with anything they gave him, but that is what brought him to the next level. Do you know who that was originally for?
It was Nakamura.
A lot of people don't know that, but Nakamura came out and said that was the original pitch for him, and man, I just don't think that would have worked. No. It would have felt so weird. Yeah, it totally
went to the right guy eventually. Bobby Roode has worked it, and his whole gimmick is glorious. I love it. And the Nakamura song is probably my favorite theme song out there right now. I have it on my phone like a nerd. And it's on my gym playlist. And what's funny is because I fucking hate techno, and I hate people that listen to techno, but I got that song, which is essentially a techno song with a violin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Glorious, like, I agree with you, Nakamura's being my favorite. Glorious is probably my second favorite.
Yeah.
If I'm getting really nerdy, Aleister Black's theme song, probably my third favorite in all of wrestling.
Yeah. All right, so Shelton Benjamin, he returned. He's been speculated for a while. He's finally returned, and they're going to put him right with Chad Gable to do a tag team. I think that's great. I wonder how long it's going to last. Maybe they'll feud against each other down the road, but that's awesome, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, American Alpha 2.0, exactly what it is. And Chad Gable's great as a tag team. He's really good as a singles competitor, too, and I think he's got a bright future. But I look forward to seeing Shelton Benjamin back. He was always very entertaining as a wrestler in WWE. He had some good stuff outside of WWE, so excited to have him back.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a way better wrestler than Jason Jordan. He has way more charisma, and he's a veteran. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be awesome.
And I do like the story they went with it too, where Daniel Bryan said, "Hey, I let Jordan go to Raw in exchange for Kurt Angle helping me sign his friend." Like I like they didn't just bring him in; they had a reason that Daniel Bryan wanted him, and he had Kurt Angle help him get him there. I like that.
Yeah, they tied it all together, so it's perfect. Cena looks like he's going to do Knight Rider. That came out earlier this week. I'm stoked, man. I'm a Knight Rider guy. I don't give a fuck.
Is he going to be playing the car?
No, dude. Guess who's going to be playing the car?
Who's that?
Kevin Hart. He's going to be
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a couple really big movies coming up for Cena because he got a Bumblebee movie coming up, Knight Rider. I mean, we're getting close to the end of John Cena as a wrestler.
Well, he's getting in his 40s. He's been around forever. He's on Good Morning America all the time. He's got a really shitty show on Fox called American Grit. And he recently a movie came out with him in it called The Wall, which is in my queue. I have not seen it yet, but Matt Tristo, shout out to Matt News, he told me that it was really good. So I will. It's in my queue. I'll be watching that. It's a war movie, and fuck, you got me sold when it's a war movie. I'll watch any war movie that comes out.
Yeah.
So, I'm super stoked. He's gonna be playing. He's gonna be doing a David Hasselhoff's character, and that was a really cool show back in the day. I don't know if you ever got a chance to watch it, but the car talked and could do all kinds of cool shit, man.
Yeah, I've seen stuff of it, but I never really got to watch it. But it's got John Cena in it. I'll support wrestlers if it's something halfway good. When Kevin Hart is not a leading role and he's more of a supporting character, the movie usually tends to be pretty good. So if Kevin Hart's not the primary voice of the show or of the movie, I would expect it to be pretty funny. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so UFC news. Brian Stan retired from announcing. That came out of nowhere, man. I was literally I was on Twitter the moment his tweet came out, and I was like, wow, he's a really good announcer, all around great guy. Not to be political, but if he runs for office in 2020, he's got my vote. But it looks like he's going to take over a real estate firm or something like that. But shout out to Brian Stan. He was a great fighter. He's a great announcer. He's an even better human being. So.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it? Did he start the Wounded Warriors Project, or was he just instrumental in bringing that to UFC?
No, the Hire Heroes program.
Hired Heroes, that's right. Yeah, does a lot of good because obviously he's a retired Marine. Does so much good outside of business. My first Brian Stan experience was him versus Vanderlei Silva several years back, which was just one of the most ridiculous fights I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They just stood in front of each other and threw punches until somebody got knocked out, and it was insane. And I've respected him ever since.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Fantastic person, great announcer. It'll be sad to see him gone from UFC because he brought a whole new experience to that. He was very well spoken. He had great insight, but he's going to go on and do great things outside of there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple more UFC tidbits. Junior Dos Santos popped for roids. Not as big a story as Jon Jones, but hey, he was a big star. He's a former heavyweight champion. Surprise, surprise, he says it's a standard supplement, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
It's crazy now that they're actually doing hard drug testing with USADA. How many guys are getting popped for roids now? It's
weird.
It's crazy.
Weird.
Yeah.
Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is going to take on Jorge Masvidal on October 7th in Las Vegas. Also on that show, Fabricio Verdum versus Derek Lewis. Lyoto Machida, he's coming back. He's on his suspension. He tested positive for this stuff called DHE, which I have in my cabinet. It cost me $12. And he actually listed it on his form, and they said, "Oh, you're taking that? That's illegal." And he's like, "Really?" And so, like, yeah, it's illegal. You can't. So here's a 2-year suspension. So that kind of sucks. He did not, he wasn't taking any kind of illegal steroids. He took a banned substance, which is completely different. DHE is just a vitamin that you can get at GNC, which I happen to have in my cabinet right now. So, yeah. So anyway, he's coming back. He's going to fight Derek Brunson on October 28th. So it's going to be good to see Lyoto the Dragon Machida back, former UFC light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, and he was one of the bigger stars in the light heavyweight division for a long time. So I didn't even know he was suspended. A year suspension is not a huge deal, but hopefully he comes back and can put on a great show, because he was really entertaining to watch when he was on. Yeah, when he was on, he was dangerous.
Absolutely. Right, we got some Global Force news. Hey, last week while we were on the air, the story broke that Jim Cornette was in negotiations with Global Force, and we were saying, well, yeah, we're excited to see him on Global Force. We just hope he's not an authority figure. Well, as soon as the show ended, I turn on the TV, there's fucking Jim Cornette as the authority figure on Global Force. Yeah. So, but you know what? I'll take Jim Cornette any way I can get him. I think he's completely and thoroughly entertaining, one of my favorite people in wrestling. So I'm glad that he's back on TV. Did you get a chance to watch him?
Yeah, I did, and he'll bring something new to Global Force as a character, as a talker. He's one of the best speakers in all of wrestling, so I think this is a solid move for him.
Yeah, Loki is gone. I guess he has some creative differences, so he's gone. I think he wanted to be world heavyweight champion in the main event, and they said no. Yeah. And so he asked for his release, and they gave it to him. So later, Loki. I guess Ring of Honor will be hiring soon. John Morrison, or Johnny Mundo, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Blaze, Johnny Spade, Johnny whatever the fuck, John Hennigan. He is now Johnny Impact on Global Force Wrestling. I guess he's debuting tonight. So if you're listening to this before, spoiler alert, if you're listening to it after, you already saw it. So he's debuting tonight. And I think, spoiler, he's probably going to be in the main event of Bound for Glory in October, Global Force's next pay-per-view. I think that's a big move. He's a big star. I recently saw him in Daly City at All Pro Wrestling. He wrestled Adam Thornstowe of Reno Scum. It was a really good match. The guy's in great shape. Still go. He's still a big star, man.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger reasons he's not in WWE is because he's wanting to do more movie stuff that their schedule won't allow him to do. So him and Global Force leaving Lucha Underground behind, they will work around his schedule. He's a fantastic wrestler. I think this is a good move for him. Like I said before, when I knew he was going there, I expect him to end up in the main event scene and probably end up with the title sooner than later.
Yeah, I just wish he didn't get that shitty-ass name, but he can overcome that.
Yeah. I mean, you can overcome bad names.
Right. Stephan Bonnar, if you guys haven't seen Ariel Helwani's show at the MMA Hour, Stephan Bonnar and Phil Baroni were on that show, and they were called The Real Shooters. That's their tag team name. But I guess Stephan Bonnar signed with Global Force, and he's going to be starting a feud with Bobby Lashley and King Mo. I still think Stephan Bonnar is a big star. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. He just started his career in pro wrestling, and he's already going to be in a pay-per-view kind of semi-main event on Bound for Glory. So it's a Moose and Stephan Bonnar versus Lashley and King Mo. King Mo, obviously a huge star. Bobby Lashley, a huge star. So I think this is great, man, and it's going to give Moose kind of a big push too.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to see more of this happen. I want to see guys come from MMA to professional wrestling, because the skill set, I think, translates pretty well. They're very similar in what you have to do to be successful. You have to be, charismatic. Stephan Bonnar, obviously one of the pioneers of UFC. His fight with Forrest Griffin is what really put UFC on the map. I mean, it's one of the best fights of all time. Yeah. So hopefully, I want to see him have a lot of success. He's got all the right tools for it.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of my favorite fighters for a long time. It's kind of see that he's moved on from his MMA career. Now he's doing something else, man. And his fight with Forrest Griffin, one of the great fights of all time. It's the first fight ever inducted into the UFC. So he is technically a UFC Hall of Famer. So I think it's a big get for Global Force, man. I'm super excited. I will actually try to watch that as often as possible. Alberto is an asshole.
Yeah, always.
Always, yeah. We somehow, some way, every week we can say that. He was stripped of the title, and then last week last week we said Alberto's an asshole because he was stripped of the title, but then claimed it was his idea. Then Jim Cornette went on TV, said it was not his idea, it was our idea. He's stripped of the title. And now it's come out that they are basically done with him. I don't think that we'll be seeing Alberto on Global Force Wrestling anytime soon. So, good riddance. Alberto is an asshole.
Yeah, and he'll probably go to AAA and, book some big match there and then blow him off again and just be a piece of shit continuing. So, good riddance.
Yeah, I should be nice considering I might be moving to San Antonio, Texas. That's where he lives. So hopefully he doesn't listen to the show. So we got some quick hits here. Tony Schiavone returning to announcing for MLW. MLW's got an iPay-per-view coming on called MLW One Shot. And the main event is going to be Ricochet versus Shane Strickland. So that should be a really, really good match. If you're not familiar with Shane Strickland, he is a kill shot on Lucha Underground. Really good wrestler. And on the undercard of that, they got Sami Callihan versus MVP. Jeff Cobb is also going to be wrestling. They haven't really announced the whole show yet. But I am an MLW fan. I listen to a lot of their podcasts. That's where our friend Conrad Thompson, who just won Sports Podcaster of the Year for the Pritchard Show, him and Bruce Pritchard, and that also Tony Schiavone's show was on there with Conrad as a co-host. A lot of cool wrestling content on the MLW Radio Network, and now they're getting back into promoting live events. So I'm super excited about that. We'll keep you guys posted on the card as it unfolds, and we'll be sure to watch that when it comes out. But Tony Schiavone, big star to me, man. He was kind of one of the voices of my childhood. He was the voice of WCW Monday Nitro. And I've been shocked that he didn't actually get a job with WWE right afterwards. I figured he would have been great to transition over, but he's been away from wrestling for 16 years, so it's going to be awesome to see him come back.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize it had been that long, and he was kind of in an unfortunate situation when WCW went down because WWE already had their team. They had Michael Cole, they had Jim Ross, and Jerry Lawler. It's hard to make – I mean, you can only have so many announcers, so – from there, he decided he wanted to step away, so it'll be great to have him back. Yeah, man.
Minoru Suzuki, he's coming to Ring of Honor. It'll be his first wrestling match inside the United States in, I think, 25 years. He actually had a pro wrestling match back in the day with Ken Shamrock. And who knows who he's going to be wrestling. If I'm Ring of Honor, I give him the Vinny Massaro, our friend at Snoring Elbow. He said I give him the keys to the company. I agree. I think he is fucking tremendous. One of my favorite guys to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, could that be a Cody Rhodes match? I'm going to keep calling him Cody Rhodes. I don't give a shit that he's not supposed to use that name. But I mean, Cody Rhodes seems to be every big match out there on the Indies is going to him, and for the right reason. I mean, he appears to be a draw, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be perfect, man. Cody Rhodes, Minoru Suzuki, main event of a pay-per-view. It's going to be in Sam's Town Casino. Maybe the Garbage Time Points guys, I think they might actually go to that. I'll talk to them and see if they're going to go, and maybe they'll be our correspondents on the scene there. And that's going to be really cool. I've been looking forward to that. Bruno Mars. I don't think everybody knew this, but Bruno was actually named after Bruno Sammartino. His dad gave him that nickname when he was a baby. And they recently took a pic together. I guess Bruno Sammartino was at the Bruno Mars show, which sounds fucking hilarious. That an 82-year-old man who's the former, WWF champion for, thousands of days or something like that. But that's really cool, man. Not a lot of people knew that. I had heard the story years ago, but now it's kind of out in the public now.
Do you think anybody at that concert, aside from Bruno Mars, knew who Bruno Sammartino was?
Not a chance in hell, no.
Not a chance.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that if, and I'm not trying to disparage Bruno Sammartino because he's a huge star to me, but he hasn't wrestled since 1985, so it wouldn't make sense that people at that concert would know who he is. And if he went to WrestleMania, I would say maybe 10% of the audience would know who he is. It's 30 some odd years ago. So, yeah. But no, I thought that was pretty cool, man. And it's pretty cool that Bruno Sammartino gets back in the spotlight a little bit. He deserves it. He's one of the greatest ever.
Yeah, and the dude, 82 years old, still in phenomenal shape too.
Oh yeah, I mean, if Vince came calling, he could probably have a match.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And be a lot better than Hogan or Flair or any of those other older guys.
Well, you watch your goddamn mouth about Flair, all right? He would not be better than Flair. I'll give you Hogan, but he would not be better than... I think Flair, as soon as he gets out of the hospital, and shout out to Ric Flair, man, I hope he's doing great. Apparently he's alive and kicking, and he's just ready to get out of that hospital. So hopefully he comes out of the hospital, man, and they just put him right back into the main event scene.
There we go. Give me Bruno Sammartino versus Ric Flair, WrestleMania 34.
Fuck yeah, dude. I'm all over it. All right, so that's going to do it for Quick Hits. And now on to our Who Gives a Shit. Joe, you kind of already said yours. You really ought to put that in the notes. That way I don't step on your toes.
No, it's fine. Like I was trying to come up with another one, but like I just couldn't hold off on it.
Yeah, it's just burning up inside of you. All right, well, you already said yours. My Who Gives a Shit this week is Nikki Bella on Dancing with the Stars. So I guess that's two parts of Who Gives a Shit. I don't give a shit about Nikki Bella, and I give even less of a shit about Dancing with the Stars. I don't care about Nikki Bella or her boyfriend or her stupid hat that she wears or her shitty matches or her shitty promos or anything about Nikki Bella. Don't give a fuck. And I care even less about Dancing with the Stars. That has got to be the dumbest fucking show on television. I actually did watch it like 10 years ago when Jerry Rice was on, and I have trouble even admitting that I watched it. But Jerry Rice is my favorite football player of all time. I had to support him. But who gives a shit about ballroom dancing? All right, who gives a shit about celebrities trying to be a ballroom dancer? Give me a fucking break. Why is this even an announcement? Why is this on television? I don't care. Who gives a shit?
Yeah. See, my thing with that is I'm kind of the exact opposite of you. I give no shit about Dancing with the Stars, and I give even less of a shit about Nikki Bella. She is one of my most hated women's wrestlers of all time. I think she's
joke. Not a wrestler.
And she's a women's champion, by God, longest reigning of all time, apparently. But the only reason she got where she is she's related to John Laurinaitis. I think it's John Laurinaitis is their stepdad. And somewhere along the lines, she went out and got big fake tits and started nailing John Cena. So she got the trifecta for Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and you know what? That's gross. The whole thing is gross. I'm glad that women's wrestling is not, underneath the Bellas anymore. I'm glad that they're gone. So I'm not interested in them at all. So anyway, I don't want to really end on a sour note like that. we've had a really good show, man. It was great to talk to Marcus Everett, man. What a cool guy. Everybody go ahead and support him. He is at Everlasting MBD. We'll go ahead and tweet him out. We're sure as hell going to tweet out that GIF when we release the show here in a little bit. But so Joe, we already talked about Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. What else are you watching this weekend?
Yeah, actually, I've got plans to watch. I finished up Glow on Netflix this past weekend, which I would highly recommend to anybody who is a wrestling fan. It was a phenomenal watch. It was fun. Showed a good side of independent wrestling. Like, none of these women were wrestlers at all when they came, and they were just showing up for an acting job, and it turns out the job they were acting for was wrestling. I finished that up. I had a great time watching it, and they've actually got a Glow documentary, so the real story of the gorgeous ladies of wrestling on Netflix. So I'm going to hit up that documentary this weekend and see a little bit more inside details of it.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Enjoy that. Obviously, I'll be watching Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. I got to go do some family stuff. I think I'll try to catch the New Day versus the Usos. And you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna let me look this up. This is very unprofessional. I'm sorry, guys. It's all right. I literally get paid nothing to do this. So I want to look up the match that I want to see here, that I want to talk about next week. Unprofessional, I know, I'm sorry. Alright, so I want to talk about Sergeant Slaughter versus Pat Patterson, the Alley Fight, 1981's Wrestling Observer Match of the Year. Joe, you have a copy of that, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Let's try to watch that this weekend or before next week, because we're supposed to be doing our Match of the Year series, but we kind of skipped it this week because we had Marcus come on. I really want to watch that. I've seen it before, and you know what? I'm looking forward to breaking that down. So we'll talk about we won't just talk about the match itself. I want to talk about the history of Sergeant Slaughter and the history of Pat Patterson up into that point. So we'll divide that up, and then we'll really give you in-depth analysis on that match. But I've seen it before, one of the greatest matches of all time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. I've not got to watch it myself yet, so it's always nice to go into something new. My history growing up with Sergeant Slaughter was always just kind of one of the, actually, and Pat Patterson too was always one of Vince McMahon's lackeys, one of the guy who was always behind the scenes. You've seen him breaking up fights backstage. So I really got to do more history watching there for some of his great matches, and look forward to this one.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, that's going to do it. Thanks for listening, everybody. And go ahead and subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, like us on SoundCloud, follow us on Twitter. We're at The Pod Express. I'm at Get Up Mike. Joe, you are?
At Joe Gilbert 1992.
All right, everybody listens to the Garbage Time Points podcast. We're on there each and every Tuesday. Follow those guys at GTP Mike and Rick. And that's going to do it. Talk to you again after a while.